The Christmas jumper is being worn because it's the end of 2023 and we're going to be reviewing our preaching and teaching from the last year and planning and thinking about the year ahead, although that's actually next week. Malcolm here with Tuesday Teaching Tip, episode 341, From Reflection to Action, enhancing your teaching skills. So what has God taught you this year about preaching and teaching? Because today we're going to discuss 3, I hope, valuable tips for you to help you review the lessons God has taught you this year so that we can celebrate our growth and prepare for the new lessons that God will teach us in 2024. So, without further ado, tip number 1, personal reflection. Personal reflection. When anybody asks me for feedback after they've preached a lesson, my response is to ask them a question, which is, what do you think? They've asked me what I think, but my first question is, well, what do you think? It's not a test, honestly, if I've ever done this to you. It's not a test to see if they produce the right answer, as if there would be one. Rather, it's an opportunity for them to grow in their ability to assess their own teaching and preaching. And why is that important? Well, it's because a preacher or a teacher hears their own preaching and teaching more than any member of their congregation ever will. And so we can become our best sources for feedback if we train ourselves to think this way, to think about what am I learning? How did this lesson come across? So how do we do this? Well, first of all, we take time to pause and to think deeply about the experiences of our preaching and teaching. What's that been like this year? To think about some of the things that we've since went well, some things that we found challenging, and some areas that we're aware need improvement. And reflecting on those personal experiences, our interpretation, we can identify what has worked well and what needs some adjustment. And we can ask ourselves questions like, what teaching and preaching strategies have been effective in capturing my audience's attention? So what have you done that's connected people well with you in your preaching and teaching? Or another question could be, how well have I integrated biblical principles into my lessons? Or another question could be, have I effectively communicated the main points of my sermons? You could ask yourself many other questions, but these might do for starters. Let me give you a few specific suggestions that will help self-reflection. Firstly, watch or listen to some of your lessons. Now, if you've preached a lot like I have, you can't review all of them, but how about dipping into your archive over the last 12 months and just dip in? Perhaps not a whole lesson, but just a few minutes of one here, one there, one from January, one from February, one from March. Dip in, listen, and watch. What do you notice? Secondly, reflect on the sense you had of the congregation's engagement just through the year. Do you feel like the congregation was with you in most of your lessons or not? Thirdly, have a look at your lesson notes. Again, if you preach frequently, perhaps not all of them, but at least dip into some and have a look at the structure of your notes and the content of them and ask yourself whether the main point of the lesson was really clear. Were you true to the text of Scripture? On reflection, did your illustrations illuminate the meaning? Or were they just entertaining? Were some of your applications made helpfully, practically, as opposed to being vague or off target? Ask yourself, what was healthy about your preaching this year? What could be improved? And remember that you're not looking so much for one-off things that happened, but more for the patterns. What's the pattern of your engagement with the congregation? What's your pattern of people giving you good, positive feedback? What's the pattern of it being clear what your main point is? What's the pattern of your illustrations being on target? What's the pattern of your applications actually being useful? Look for the patterns of the year, and that will help you. So that's the first thing, is personal reflection. Tip number 2 is to get some friendly feedback. Friendly feedback. Focusing on the power of collaborative reflection. Collaborative reflection involves engaging in discussion and sharing ideas with fellow preachers and teachers or your hearers, those who listen to you. And this collaboration process allows us to gain new insights, new perspectives, learning from the experiences of others. Some people see us and hear us differently to others. And engaging in collaborative reflection, doing that, we can benefit from the collective wisdom and the expertise of other people. We can discuss our teaching and preaching experiences. We can talk about strategies that might work well. We can talk about, we could troubleshoot the challenges that we've had. And this provides a supportive environment where we can receive constructive feedback and suggestions for improvement. So some suggestions to go with this point. Firstly, ask trusted people for feedback. You'll doubtless get some feedback from your critics, whether you want it or not, whether you ask for it or not, but you might have to ask your friends for their feedback. Ask them. I've got a meeting planned later this week with some old friends of mine from the local congregation, and I'll be asking them for their thoughts on my priorities for the year ahead. And one area I plan to ask them about is how my preaching was this year and what they think I can grow in for 2024. I'll let you know what they say. That'll be in next week's episode. And also, it's helpful to review any verbal or written feedback you've received this year from email, Facebook, YouTube comments and such. I hope you've kept a copy, by the way, and it's really good to do that because it helps on occasions like this to then review. Look at those comments and ask yourself if, there are any patterns there. Also, consider the strengths of other preachers and teachers that you admire and whether their strengths could become yours. What is it about their speaking that you would like to incorporate, and why is it important to you? Third tip today is to take action. That's so important, isn't it? Reflection alone is insufficient. It must be followed by some action. And taking action based on our reflections and the feedback we receive allows us to grow and to implement positive changes in our teaching and preaching practices. And this can involve implementing new strategies, trying different teaching methods, or incorporating the feedback we've received from other people. Ask yourself whether something stands out from all of your own reflection and the feedback from other people. Does one thing stand out? If you've got several areas to consider, pick just one. Start with one. It doesn't matter which one in some ways, but find one action to take on that area. My aim this year, 2023, was to grow in effective urging. From 1 Thessalonians, where Paul talks about the fact that he comforted, encouraged, and urged the Thessalonians. And that's been my thing, because I think in general, I'm a bit better at comforting and encouraging than I am at urging. So my goal this year has been to grow in the urging side of things. And so I printed off those three words, encourage, comfort, and urge. I stuck them in the front of my Bible, below the monitor I'm recording this on right here, in my pad that I used to put my notes in to preach from. It's been visible to me. So what's one step you could take? I think that's helped me this year. What's one step in the right direction for you? The key here is to move. It's not to worry about whether you will arrive somewhere. Just take a step so that you're moving. Wonder what that might be for you. Wrapping up, our personal reflection, collaborative feedback reflection, and taking action based on what we get from all that are the tools we need for growth and improvement in our teaching and our preaching. Now, we got one more teaching tip left this year. Next week, we will explore preaching and teaching growth for 2024. In the meantime, why not send me your reflections and the actions you plan to take? Let's share them with one another to encourage and inspire our preaching and teaching community. We learn best when we're learning in community. Let's do that. By the way, I'd like to encourage you to take part in the AIM UK and Ireland program to develop your understanding of Scripture and how best to then preach and teach it. Our current module is Counseling and Psychology, Biblical Pastoral Counseling. You can find out more by going to the website, aimukandireland.com, or you can email me, courses@aimukandireland.com, and we'll give you more details. And add a comment about this week's recording here. If you've got any questions about the Bible, email me, malcolm@malcolmcox.org. If you'd like a free copy of my ebook on spiritual disciplines, then sign up for my newsletter at malcolmcox.org. If you know anybody that might benefit from this, please pass the link on, subscribe, leave a review, do all the good stuff like usual. And until the next time, do remember at all times to keep calm and carry on teaching. Take care and God bless.